The Workers' History Museum and Carleton's Centre for Public History recently held an artifacts assessment workshop. Students from the CCPH were given a number of articles which have been conditionally donated to the WHM and had the opportunity to formulate recommendations as to whether or not the items should be made part of the museum's collection. The process included physical examinations of the artifacts and also the opportunity to interview the donors.
What we're going to do today is we're going to look at objects that a donor has brought in. So we're going to go through the process. You guys are going to be the museum official. On the back of the form is a historical summary sheet. This is basically an interview between you and the donor. It's to get as much information about this object as humanly possible. We have standard headings like who was the originator, where did it come from, who made it, what was it used for, but depending on the object you can always elaborate. And the idea is to get as much information as possible while you're interviewing the donor, because sometimes donors, they know a lot about their own items and they forget that you don't know anything. And this is where the other forms come in. We have a condition report, which is attached to all the concession registers. These are forms that basically you fill out to determine whether or not the object is in good condition or not. At this point, it's used as an assessment. And we also have artifact assessment forms, which is what goes to our committee to recommend to the board whether or not we take an item.
I find it interesting because it has this very long carriage,
Yes.
which makes me think that it might have been a wartime machine with
Bigger plans.
bigger
Yeah.
plans or documents. Yeah, I was thinking too in terms of journalism, because sometimes, you have larger format pages as well, but I really don't know.
Yeah.
I-
Actually, I mean, it looks like it's been worn. Noiseless typewriter. So who wants to?
But it's kind of great. The logo is great.
So what the UE would let me do is the UE gave me access to their health and benefit plan in the office, and so I had that for 20 years, even when we merged with the CAW and
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Yeah, I had paid my.
So that's what happened. You merged with the CAW.
And then the UE merged with the CAW within about 2 years.
You can see they actually had quite a few coming out during the war.
Yes. Well,
Unless there's anything else you'd like to add for the record.
Gone away and thought about it for a week or whatever,
Yeah.
by all means contact Santa.
And do you know this? Do you know how it was used? I noticed how it's got this flap here, for
which can be
something maybe
for
pressed
document or for shirts as a press.
Mhm.
And then you have the internal document case, which is extra secure.
That's really gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautifully made.
Yeah.
I forgot about that till I see it, right? And then it brings it back.
Where does your family come in? They acquire it themselves? Or?
Yep. Yeah. Again, this is a comptometer. Thing was built by Victor Business Machine Company. Comptometer number 9 Bravo. Its green finish makes me wonder if it might not have been something that was produced at wartime. Artisanal profession. So if you had a town and you had a cobbler shop, the person making the shoes would be a man.
Because they're both in the same artifact number kind of thing.
And what I was
And
using
then
it
you
for
said
was
that.
like counting the cans of this product on a shelf, and then because we used to do inventory.
And circumstances surrounding discovery or acquisition.
I got them when I was working at National Defense and the General Stores Warehouse, and I was the president of the Labor Council. I was looking for staff books to keep of what I was doing at Labor Council and Labor Council history sort of stuff that I was collecting. So the guys in the warehouse gave them to me.
The Workers' History Museum and the Carleton Centre for Public History continue to collaborate to bring Carleton's academic expertise to the museum and giving students practical experience and opportunities to apply their knowledge. For more information, please contact the Workers' History Museum at exhibits@workershistorymuseum.ca.
kinds of
Yeah.
things, as a lot of women did, who were at home raising children. And I'm an only child, so
Yeah.
it's not like she had 6 of us to ride herd on. So
Yeah.
she was able to use her considerable abilities,
Yeah.
not just, riding herd on me. So,
Yeah.
but I think she was probably a really good businesswoman, and it was kind of a shame that she didn't continue to be able to do that. But, the 50s were the 50s, the
Yeah.
early 50s especially. So.
Yeah. What, how many employees did your father have, and did someone take over the sort of jobs that your mother did when she?
Well, I assume, because
Yeah.
it had to happen, yeah.
And it wasn't
the
gonna be
business
him, so-
continued for another, 13,
Yeah.
14 years, so it didn't fold immediately, if
Yeah.
that was the case. I don't know. I would think, from what I can recall as a child, there were 4 to 6 mechanics who worked, full-time. And there would be, maybe somebody doing parts. There would be people who went out and pumped gas, because you did in those days.
Yeah. My father used to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know, probably 8 to 10 people,
Yeah.
depending at any
Yeah.
given time.
Yeah.
So small
But it's
business.
probably the sort of thing that you
Small
could
community business.
find in.
My dad was active in
archives
sort of the Businessmen's Association and the Richelieu, the founder of the Richelieu in
Is that a?
East Hoo. It's like a service club.
Okay.
A service club,
Yeah.
largely French and Catholic,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Lions, which were
Yes.
English
Yeah. Okay.
and Protestant.
I've heard of the Lions. Yeah.
Okay, so the Richelieu Club was like that.
It's, yeah.
And
the
my
French
only
bit.
real strong memories of the Richelieu Club was that they would have father-son oyster dinners.
Yeah.
And my father didn't have a son, so he brought me.
Yeah.
And he would sit me on his lap, and I would eat my weight in oysters, and
Yeah.
nobody said anything about it, right? So we were early integrators
Yes,
of
of-
the Richelieu,
yeah.
so nobody threw us out. So
Yeah.
it was all good.
Was your? Did you grow up speaking French?
I grew up speaking both at home.
Yeah.
And when I was 4, I think my mother was ready to get rid of me for a bit, so I got sent to Académie Jeanne d'Arc on Sussex Drive for pre-kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then when they wouldn't take me into the public school system for grade 1 at 5, I got sent back to Jeanne d'Arc
Yeah.
for another year in French.
Yeah.
And then I went to Overbrook Public at 6 into
Yeah.
grade 1. And it was the mid-50s, and the feeling was, and I grew up speaking franglais, essentially both
You're just-
interchangeably,
yeah.
My mom was primarily an English speaker who spoke French. My dad was primarily a French speaker who spoke English. And we sort of did both at the house.
Pick whichever word works better.
And I have a funny story later. And then when I started to go to school in the public school system, they basically felt that it would be confusing and perhaps detrimental to my education if we were speaking one language at home and I was being educated in another. It's the complete opposite to what we now understand to be the way to go.
Yeah.
But that's what they thought, and they stopped speaking French to me.
Yeah.
So I lose it periodically. If I work at it, it comes back.
Yeah.
The accent is great. The grammar gets shaky and the vocabulary gets
Yeah.
shaky, so I sound better than I actually am, which does no harm.
Yeah.
As opposed to the people who speak really good French, but they really sound,
Yeah.
like they're still in Alberta.
Yeah.
And so and that was, I think, fairly typical. And I've always been an East Ender. I grew up in Overbrook, and then my family moved further east in the middle of the 60s, which is more francophone than anglophone in terms of the demographic of the city. So I remember, back in those days, you got booted out of the house at 9 o'clock in the morning, come back when the street lights come on, don't get wet,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing, And I can remember being told this, and we had this swell swamp very close to where we lived, and when you're a kid, there's nothing better than a swamp, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing I survived my childhood without drowning, getting cholera or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got wet.
Yeah.
And so I came home, and Mr. Berube, who was this really nice gentleman who used to service the furnace every year, and I think he also helped with my dad's business, and so we used to see Mr. Berube, and he was down working on the furnace, and I'm stomping down the cellar stairs saying, "Carlis, it's not my fault," which was something I had learned from my grandfather, and he's there just giggling away, as this 4-year-old is stomping down. "Carlis, it's not my fault." however. So yeah, I grew up speaking French. I did, yeah. Whether it was the nice French the nuns taught me, which does you no good at all shopping in Hull,
Yes, no.
I'm here to tell you. You know, yeah, so.
Excellent.
There you go.
This has been a ton of fun.
Oh, yes. We're gonna need another sheet.
Yes. After we do this one.
You're gonna know more about me than the artifacts by the end of this day.
Yeah. That's the fun story.
Barry's gonna be so sick.
Yes.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much. This has been
Pleasure.
a delight. All right. Onwards.
All right.
Onwards.
I've got the baggie.
Yes.
Got the baggie? That's for the foot.
That's for the foot. Yes, we should disconnect. I'll grab the dolly.
Yes.
Yes.
Now we should figure out.
Alright, so I've never done this before.
Give me a moment to turn on all the gizmos.
Yes? You can let me know if I'm missing anything.
Okay.
Ready when you are.
Sure. I guess first is the not interesting stuff, eh? The donor's name and all this.
My name is Naomi, Naomi hyphen Leigh.
L-I.
Leigh.
Perfect.
Gadbois. G as in George, A, D as in Donald, B as in Bob, O-I-S.
And your address.
21 Rothwell Drive, R-O-T-H.
Rothwell?
Mm-hmm.
That's here in Ottawa?
I am.
What is that?
Well, Gloucester, but, you know, thank you, Mike Harris.
Sorry. And your postal code.
K1J 7G5.
And your telephone number?
613-744-1192.
And your email?
Naomi Gadbois at yahoo.ca, all lowercase, all one word.
Great. And the date of deposit, would that be today's date?
Yeah.
Great. All right, and is this a possible donation, temporary loan?
Possible donation.
Okay. Great. And do we need your signature now, or do we need your signature now, or does that happen?
We do that after.
Afterwards. Okay, great. Description. Okay. So, for the name of the object, is that just cobbler tools or
They're called lasts.
lasts?
Cobbler's lasts, Lasts.
Cobbler lasts.
And the actual foot is the last.
Okay, this part here.
Yeah, this
Okay.
part, yeah.
Right.
That's your last.
And the circumstances surrounding discovery.
I purchased these
Okay.
about, 25 years ago now, at an antique shop on Highway 7 near Tweed, Ontario. I don't know if they're local to the region.
Okay.
I collected them because aside from the fact they're really cool objects, I'm interested in women's work, and traditionally cobbling, shoemaking, was a male artisanal profession. So if you had a town and you had a cobbler shop, the person making the shoes would be a man.
Okay.
However, in Britain and in Canada, about the turn of the 20th century, you start to see the rise of factory shoemaking, industrial shoemaking. And in those factories, you would be as likely to have women as well as men workers. And the First World War really puts an end to artisanal shoemaking, unless you're on Bond Street in London and you're making handmade shoes for the aristocracy. Most everybody now buys shoes that are made in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, nowadays, most people are buying shoes that are made in factories in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a long history of industrial shoemaking in both Canada and the United States, and there was a long tradition of shoemakers being quite radical workers. The shoemakers and cigar makers, for some reason, really radical for starting right back to the Guild of St. Crispin.
Great.
I don't know how old these are. They're iron, they're solid iron. The base, as you see, has spots where it could be screwed to a workbench.
Okay.
And the only identifying marks on them are the sizes of the lasts, which are labeled 1, 2, and 4. I don't know, or 1, 3, and 4?
I think it's 1, 2, and 4.
1, 2, and 4. I don't know what happened with 3. And what would happen, of course, is that you would be at your workbench like this, and you built your shoe on your sole. You put your leather down and then would stitch and sew around it, and it would be there stable. And shoes are to this day built on lasts. If you have a bespoke cobbler, you have a last that's carved out of wood to the exact shape of your foot when you have shoes that are made specifically for you, bespoke shoes. Not very many of us get our shoes that way anymore, and so we tend to have shoes that are built industrially on lasts like this. I have a wide foot. I've never been able to wear a shoe that was made in either Italy or Brazil because they make them on very narrow lasts to this day. So that's really all the information I have about them.
Okay.
At some point, I will get to the part of the basement that has another shoe last in it, which is a wooden last for a high heel shoe from the 1950s. That I know simply from the shape of the last and the shoe. These could be 100 years old. They could be 50 years old. I really don't know, and I don't know where they originated.
They actually might be biblical. There's that line, the foot's shall be last.
No, that's the first shall be last, Barry.
No, I think that's a mistranslation.
You godless commies.
Great. All right, try to get that as much as I can. So we don't know original owners. We don't know, or the factory or anything like that,
No.
or even place of origin. Would they have been in Britain? You mentioned the factories in Britain beforehand.
Well,
But equally, they could have been
it could
here, presumably?
it could very equally have been Canadian or
Mhm.
American. It
Okay.
could be something that the owner of the antique store got from somewhere else,
Right.
or it could have been something that was local or Toronto, you
Right.
know, in the Kingston area. We'd have to sort of figure out where there might be shoe factories in this area or in sort of in Ontario, where they might have come from. I have, for example, some artifacts from the textile industry, and which we had, of course, here in the Ottawa Valley. The artifacts that I have actually come from Southern Ontario, from the Galt area. But again, they're almost impossible to date because they could be anywhere from the 1920s to the 1980s. They don't change. Right? And they were pretty universal. They could have just as easily have come from Massachusetts or Liverpool.
Right.
So that's all I know about them.
Okay.
It's just a really cool object.
Great. Yeah. I think that covers most things I have.
Okay.
Great. Great. Anything we've missed, or is that?
I don't think so.
All right. Great. Oh, transfer these to a better sheet. Thank you.
Alrighty, you're welcome.
Candy dishes or something.
Candy dishes? It makes an outstanding paperweight.
Or
Yeah.
a drink and a bowl of olives.
There you go. Yeah.
Great. Do you mind just getting the bill?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My little godniece saw one and said, "It's a what?" Trunk. It's like a mini trunk, David, and it's expandable, as you see.
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
Document
We were
case.
looking for the document. I couldn't find it.
Okay.
I really like that.
Have fun.
Thank you, David.
Oops. Did you get to have fun on that? You can edit.
No, we want this to be fun. This is for the promo.
Yeah.
Fun.
Look at the fun we have.
Auto-tune you. Okay, please have a seat.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to need to sit somewhere to write.
Yeah, no, please have do that.
Okay.
Actually, if you just give me that little recorder.
Yes.
It's And we're rolling.
And we're rolling.
So I'm Marianne.
Hi, Marianne. I'm Naomi.
So I will need your contact information eventually, but I think we can start with
Sure.
the history of this magnificent suitcase. All right. So circumstances surrounding discovery or acquisition. So where did this suitcase come from?
It actually came from my family in Montreal. It was made, I believe, in the 30s. I know it's been in my family since the mid-50s. Whether it had a previous owner to my family acquiring it, I don't know. There seems to have been a name rubbed off the side and then a G put on the side. So it might indeed have been secondhand when it came into my family. The reason it's here is because the museum is doing an exhibit on immigration. And we had thought that to transport the materials, it might be useful to do that in a suitcase for the obvious reasons. And so I thought that if the museum was interested, I would donate it for that purpose. It may or may not be useful in that it's very heavy. It has a wooden frame. It's essentially a mini trunk. It was intended to be slung onto trains and onto boats for distant travel. I know it went to Italy and to France and to Spain
Really?
with my uncle Charles-Émile Gadbois, who was a musicologist.
Wow.
And he was seminary trained as a priest and was a Cistercian monk. But early in his life, he studied music at Juilliard and made it his life work to basically travel to all of the places that the roots of French-Canadian music came from, particularly Brittany and Spain. And from that work, he collected folk songs and traditional songs in Quebec, traced their roots back to Europe, and collected a series of songbooks called La Bonne Chanson. And the PQ government adopted La Bonne Chanson as a nice nationalist project, and so they were used in the curriculum in Quebec to teach music and to teach the folk history of the province of Quebec in that nationalist. And for his work, he was honored. He was a member of the Order of Canada and had a stamp issued honoring him as a musicologist. And the suitcase belonged to him. And I know it took him to Rome, it took him to Brittany, it took him to Spain, to Lourdes, and to Compostela. So it's been on pilgrimage, both in terms of discovering Quebec's musical heritage and his own religious commitments. So that's where it comes from.
That's an amazing story.
Mm-hmm. This sort of fiber board and all the leather trim. It's all it's all beautifully stitched. And it's got its original key.
Yeah, there are 2 other little keys in there
Yep.
actually, so they have 3 copies of it.
Mm-hmm. And it
I don't know if it still works, though. It seems to be.
it
Oh,
might
yeah,
or
it
it might
does.
not. Yeah,
It does. It's got the little.
the thing that
oval.
turns, and it of course it has the flap. The fittings are brass, and it has the flap, which then this would go through to protect it,
Mm-hmm.
to help to keep it from being opened deliberately or by accident. And by opening these, of course, it would expand up,
extends, yeah.
so it could be
So you don't know the story of the scratched off letter?
I don't know the story of the scratch loft
But the
letters.
G would be for his last
For
name?
Gadbois, yes.
What was his first name again?
Charles Émile Gadbois.
I will want to learn more about this man. I almost became an ethnomusicologist.
Did you?
I'm actually really fascinated by the history of folk music in Quebec. So
Well,
I
yeah.
will look up his history,
Google 'em.
definitely.
Yeah, Google them.
Keep a picture of his suitcase.
Hmm. So I just thought it's such an interesting beat up old of evocative object that it would be really interesting to have our workers' immigration story.
And since he has owned it, no one has used it? It's just been...
That's right.
storage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know of anybody else who may have additional information about the suitcase or his life?
No, my dad was the last of the family, and he went about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I
But
have
there is information published
about Charlemille. Oh
about
yes, yeah.
Charlemille.
There's lots of information about Charlemille.
Okay.
He taught music to the Dion quintuplets.
Oh my gosh.
We have wonderful photographs of him with the girls, and the originals of those photographs the family donated to the Dion Museum. And I have copies of the letters that they sent thanking him for the donation of the photographs. And we have copies of the photographs, of course, in the family papers. And the stamp and all of that good stuff. So it has that connection. And as I said, it in and of itself doesn't fit with my collection of workers' tools related to work, but the reason that it's here is because I thought it might be useful for our immigration projects.
Mhm. Seeing as it might have been secondhand, maybe it did come.
Maybe it did. I have no idea where it was made, but as I say, it's wood, leather, and brass.
So it is a kind of suitcase that would have been used.
Yes,
for
exactly.
immigrants on
If you were
steam
packing up your
ships.
life and going across the ocean and possibly never going back to where you came from, this was what you would put your life in to do that. So you'd have to be, I think, reasonably well off because it's in its day. I think it was a luxury item, given that it's the leather and.
It's not a carpet bag,
It,
definitely.
it's not a carpet bag, so I don't know, but it's seen the world.
Mhm. And it's in fairly good condition after all these years. I mean, it's worn and the
Yeah.
straps are breaking off.
Needs to be cleaned up, but.
Yeah, but it looks like it's been used and loved.
Mhm. It was made to be sturdy, and it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, things probably still wouldn't get out, even though it is a bit worn on the edges.
Mhm.
So presumably 1930s it was made.
I
and
think so. From the
has been
styling,
used.
yeah.
And how long was it in use? Do you know? From the 50s until when did he travel?
Oh gosh, from the late 40s right through the 60s. For the work that he did for La Bonne Chanson.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covers his history. I will just be needing your help to fill out the first page about donor information.
Sure.
He did say something, though, about coming to your family in the 50s.
Well, I don't know when it came into the family. I know that it was used by members of my family in the 50s and up. But the styling of it makes me think that it's older than that, and the fact that it seems to have had a previous owner before my uncle used it.
Yeah. Now, when you say your family, do you mean including your uncle, or?
I mean my uncle, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so but then you said he started using it in the 40s.
Well, he traveled after the war ended,
Mhm.
so in the late 40s through the 50s and 60s.
But do you know if he was using this when he first started traveling?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Sorry, just getting a photo.
That's interesting. Because usually, you know, the original order, and then not too sure what happens after.
After?
But in this case, it's like the early.
The early stuff is a little mysterious, but the later stuff is well documented, yeah. And after he died, it came to us in Ottawa.
Okay.
So that's how it came into my possession, was through him.
All right.
And it came full of family documents and memorabilia and so on.
All right. Well,
All right.
I was going to ask other people to help me fill this out because they've got the information, but I think you have to sign it, so we might
Yeah,
as well just
what we'll
fill
do
it
is when
out.
we're all done, I'll just give out the name and address and all of that stuff, and everybody can write it in, and then
Yeah.
we'll just sign them all.
Okay. No problem. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'm just trying to get a shot of the G
Great.
here.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if anyone's ever written a master's thesis about this guy.
One of the things that my uncle Rahul, who was the baby of the family, did was he formed a foundation called FASEG, which was Fondation de Charles-Émile Gadbois. And what they did was raise money and then do scholarships for students studying music.
Oh,
So that was done in his honor, but Charles-Émile himself had nothing to do with that. That was Rahul Gadbois.
Yep.
My little camera.
One sec. I want to make another entrance, Barry, just to be ready.
Dramatic one.
Yeah.
Oh, she flounces in. It's- So what part of Alberta are you from?
I'm from near Edmonton,
Mhm.
but I'm a military family, so we've moved around quite a bit. I lived in Kingston for a bit. I'm more from St. Albert than anywhere else.
Oh, okay, so Army.
Yeah. Dad's a military engineer. He was base commander in Edmonton for about 6 or 7 years.
I am. My dad was basic unit officer in Edmonton for
Oh, nice.
back in the 80s.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, he was Air Force, so we were pretty cool buddy.
Yeah, fair enough. My dad often goes trips out to Wainwright and things as well.
Mhm.
So yeah. All right. So
Should we roll out this?
all right. So
So.
hello again.
Hi.
So what can you
And then might have been purchased secondhand by my mom for the business. It's quite worn on the edges, and the other business machines in the collection are not, which leads me to think that maybe they were bought new for the business, but this one was something that may have come, like the typewriters, secondhand, maybe Army surplus. Again, it's got, I think they're Bakelite buttons rather than just plastic.
Yeah.
It does have its original manual, so it's operational.
And so was this also used in the family business?
It was, yeah. With our previous conversation about my dad's business, of course, if you're stocking parts for automotive repair, etc., the requirement is to take stock periodically, several times a year, to determine what you've got, what needs replacing, and so on, and to do inventory at the end of the year for financial closing. So that's, I believe, what the purpose of that machine was and its role in the business.
And it would have been used throughout the time that the business was in operation.
I would,
and
yeah.
Kind of retired, I guess, when you're.
And retired when my father closed the business and found its way into the cabinet with the other machines.
So again, so the storage conditions would have been in the basement of the cabinet as well
Yep.
as with the other ones.
Yep.
And so with this cabinet, you were never really touching that as a child or anything
No.
like that, ever, right? So
No.
there's no particular stories in your personal memory that are associated with this machine.
No.
Is that right?
No.
So yeah, I
I
think
simply kept it as once I discovered, it was there and what it was about the time that I was actually becoming interested in collecting artifacts to do with women's work. And I know that this particular machine had been used by my mother in the clerical setting. She worked as the clerical staff and bookkeeping staff for the business, as was pretty typical at the time.
yeah, for sure. I think. Do we have any more questions? Anything else to add about this machine? I suppose.
No.
Sounds about right.
Now, last time you carried on.
I'm sorry. Sorry, but I think there's a lot of overlap.
We got all of that information out the last time,
Yeah.
so.
I might just borrow that piece of paper to write in because I think I missed the what was it? You said 9 Bravo. What was it? Bravo?
Yeah, comptometer. It was made either by Fell and Tarrant, Tarrant, Manufacturing Company, Chicago, or Victor Business Machine Company, comptometer number 9B, as in Bravo.
Okay. Sounds good.
Just have a pencil?
Oh, sure.
Now you're really done?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is a repeat of what she said earlier. Yeah. I just do it to annoy you. Yes.
Same arrangement as.
Yep.
So you're just recording the audio, or are you doing the?
Nope, new video as well. It's, that's my backup, my department, redundancy department. This is my other.
Oh, you got 2 cameras. Ooh.
Oh, fancy.
Okay.
You're good?
Yep.
All right, so name is Ken Clavitt?
It is.
It's right there. And the address?
145 Henderson with an H Avenue.
That's Ottawa?
Ottawa, Ontario, yeah. K1.
Q1?
K.
K1?
1N 735.
225. And the telephone number?
234 3596.
Email?
My name, Ken Clavet, all one word, at yahoo.ca.
All right, and that's for a possible donation?
Yes.
Right. Signature afterwards. All right, so the name of the object, would that just be
Scrapbooks, I guess.
scrapbooks?
3 scrapbooks.
That's
And so these were actually, they have a NATO stock number on them somewhere. So they actually come from Canadian Armed Forces, National Defense. And everything in National Defense has a stock number on it, no stock number. And so these did as well. Can't find them right now.
and so the original owner at
With me.
one time?
Yes.
And the original maker manufacturer would be the same, or?
I don't know if it's on it. I
Well,
can't
it's
find any
applicable.
labels on here, but
Okay. And original use too.
they were scrapbooks I kept of my time at the District Labor Council as president, with a little bit of earlier history that I had collected.
And has anybody else used the item? No. Personal thing?
Yeah.
Biographical details or background information, stories associated with the material?
I think the stories are all inside.
See, you can put see inside on there.
See inside for stories, demos, tickets, benefits.
Write those down. Did you ever show them to any other people, or was it mostly?
Oh yeah, they've been used. We wanted to remember when something happened. Quite often, we'd take the scrapbook out and
Right.
look through it to jog our memory about when.
Great. To jog memory. Recollect, I'll put down as well. Etc. Anything else? Pertinent details to mention about the objects that are collected in there, or the books themselves, or?
I can't think of anything good.
Okay.
Jesse.
Other individuals who might have additional information?
No.
No. All right, then I guess that's it. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add for the record.
No, I don't think so.
It looks like there's tons of stuff in there. So I was just looking through it myself. Yeah, it's a great piece of history.
Yeah. So, is that what we're doing?
I'm just recording.
Yeah, okay, I haven't been into this stuff. So, yeah, you can sort of see. So,
Yeah.
through stuff. If we had, this was against the wage and price control form of 5 and 6, they roll back all kinds of collective agreements. So, then we cut
That's
out
a
the
great picture, too.
newspapers. Yeah, yeah. That's Peter Larson with the Trudeau mask on, and that was a funny one. Did I ever tell you about that one? They had these Soviet people attending, so like they had a trade unionist, they had a doctor, and a publisher of a paper, and so on, and we had Russell Mills from the Citizen, and Ralph Sutherland, a doctor, and then we had myself as a labor person, and we were all going to have this panel, and Russell Mills started off, and he said some very derogatory things about the Soviet Union, and so they all got up and they stormed out and left myself and Ralph Sutherland sitting on this thing, and so then they went and had another meeting in another hall, so we had 2 meetings going on, and so Ralph and I stayed and had a debate with them, and then went to the other. With the ones that stayed, and then we went and had a discussion with the Soviets in the other hall, and then they got into the work the next day, and everyone had seen the newspaper, and I was at National Defense going, "So you're pissing off the Soviets again, are you?" So I forgot about that till I see it, right, and then it brings it back. So that's what we're using it for, hopefully. But it gives a good sense of what's happening in the labor movement, and it's very eclectic. Like I put pictures in here of where the offices were, and some stuff I grabbed from earlier offices of the District Labor Council, even before I was getting involved. I was involved here, but not at those places. So. Anyway.
Great. Thank you.
How's that? Is that what you're hoping?
When you turn it off, the stories come out.
Yeah.
I turned these off. And
Oh,
then,
did you?
but then as soon as I got started, I hit both of them again.
Yeah, well, I don't know what, you're doing this as part of the documenting process, but you're also going to do something for the video?
Well, it's going to be maybe a 2-minute to just...
Audio visual club, yeah. We
Yeah.
never did anything in the last one, so.
Yeah, so just to look how much fun we had.
Yeah. There you go. Want me to carry these?
If you like, I can do this.
You get the doors and have the
Sure.
paperwork, and
Barry gets the doors. Oh, you can get the doors.
Excuse me.
It would be very easy.
We can speed it up so it's a wrap, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, the whole thing on auto-tune.
I have a CAW one in the house I'll have to find so I can bring that in, because that was CAW doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It was actually from one of the Days of Actions, I think.
Great.
Okay, so Ken, we have looked at this, Lena and I have looked
Mhm.
at this, and we'd like to ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
From whence it may have came.
I got it when we started a small local union in Ottawa, made up of 4 people, and it's very hard to get a union for small groups. In fact, we had 4 employers in that 4 group. 4? 4. So we had Virginia Rafter from the District Labour Council, myself from Labour Community Services, Chuck Bravazan from the CUPE Council, and Stuart.
Oh, I know him.
You know Chuck?
His daughter Greer is one of my
Greer.
best friends.
Oh.
Yeah.
Small world.
Small
Lives
world,
2
huh?
blocks away from me.
Well,
Yeah.
say hi to
Works
Chuck.
I
at the
will.
museum
Yeah.
And tell
Center
Chuck,
for
tell
Public
Chuck
History all
the
the time.
museum, you could do this.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, I'll be
Chuck?
seeing him within the month.
will you
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
Chuck, what have you done with all your photographs you've taken of the labor movement over the years and demonstrations and stuff? I would love to have you donate those to the Workers' Museum, and you can take them in, and
Yeah.
you could
Digitize
we were
them.
talking about him last
Yeah.
week because the CUPE Council had a 40th wedding anniversary, 40th anniversary, and I was at the annual meeting and I was talking about the history, and we were making a timeline, and Chuck had been called and said he was going to come but didn't turn up.
Right.
But he's got a wonderful
Oh,
collection
okay.
of
It's a really
photographs.
fun. Yeah.
Of photographs from the
The
80s.
joy of Ottawa, there's only 12 of us who
yeah,
live here.
yeah. Anyway, so Chuck was in the local,
Yeah.
and so was Stuart Ryan from the TA's local at Carleton.
Right.
And so I had used my influence with the UE because I had been a Public Service Alliance of Canada rep on the OFL board, and I knew the UE, and so I convinced them to give us a charter,
Right.
providing we were self-servicing. So I became the founding president, and they gave me this jacket, which is a piece of crappy jacket you can see, but I
We were discussing whether it was nylon or polyester.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. Doesn't say.
It doesn't say. There's no
It
union
doesn't even have a
instructions
union.
to it.
Doesn't even have a union label
No,
on
no,
it.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
it's got it. Yeah, made in Burma.
So this would have been around. I'll get the actual details for you, but I think it would have been around 1990 that we got the charter, and we joined with CAW about 2 years later.
Right.
And so the UE was a very particular union because it was very heavily red-baited during the Cold War. And
Wait for a second.
okay.
There's-
Oh, he stopped it.
It's kind of, I think the red baiting bit. You'd like to capture that.
Are you going to capture us, or are we still running?
Well, sorry, keep going. I just
Oh, okay.
this was running down.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
during the Cold War, there were certain unions that had communists in their leadership. Jackson, one of the founders of the UE, was actually interned in the Hull jail during the war. When they were before the Soviet Union joined the war
The
effort.
Stewart's a communist too, right?
And Stewart eventually
yeah.
became a
Yeah.
communist.
Eventually, he wasn't at that
No,
time.
no,
Mhm.
no. Stewart was an independent left for most of his life. For
Oh.
the last 10 years, he's been a communist.
Mm.
The union is important. One of the things that most of the unions that were heavily attacked by both government, the other parts of the labor movement, they would set up independent unions. So there's a union called the International IUE, International, and actually the union stands a longer name. It's the United Electrical Radio Machine Workers, and the union had stayed in Canada. It's one of the few that managed to resist the attempts to raid it and.
Oh, really?
Discuss. Yeah, apparently they used to come up to the plants and they'd be saying, "But you're part of a communist union," and they'd pull out their wallet and take a picture of a bill with the king on it and say, I don't know, my union got me this and it's got the king on it. But it suffered because it was mostly a Welland area, industrial, you know, RCA and GE and all these places that don't exist. So by the time they knew they had to emerge with the auto workers, I think we were 11,000 members only at that point in time, and we had notice from employers that we were going to lose up to 1,800 to 2,000 within the next year.
Right.
So we knew we were going down. So I that was my jacket as president of Local 567, which is now Unifor 567.
Right.
So
So local 567 and
Yeah.
Unifor 567.
and one of the things we
Four
should.
members now?
Hmm?
More than 4 members now?
Yes, we actually now have about 70 members, I think.
Mm.
The Council of Canadians, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. We're actually a national union because those
Oh,
those
national organization.
well, no, but because the Council of Canadians and CCPA have people across the country,
Okay.
so we have these local union meetings on the telephone, and we have people from Halifax and Edmonton joining us in Winnipeg. I mean, there's just a handful of them across
Right.
the country, but they're
Right.
headquarters in Ottawa, right?
Therefore, yeah.
So they're part of our local. We got a housing co-op, Mario Giovanni Housing Co-op. We've got a media. It's almost all not-for-profits except for the media company. We have one of those media companies that does clipping and services to,
Oh, yeah.
to businesses and other groups, and so they're part of our local as well. But yeah, so that's the jacket history, and we have to get the charter. Actually, the charter's still at the Labour Council. So we have the charter from the UE. We should get Stuart to give that to us. So you mentioned that when you see him. Say, Stuart, what are we going to do with the old UE CAW charter? We should give that to the museum.
Right.
We'll get a
Yeah.
pincer. Because
Yeah.
I'm constantly bugging him about it, but they should
Right.
come in
Yeah.
here then.
Mm.
You know. How's that, enough history for you?
It's a very nice amount of history. Has anyone else ever worn this, or is this just you?
I hope not. But,
Yeah.
you know, knowing you, they probably took it. No, I think they took
No.
it out of a box
This
of,
has been-
of
you got-
jackets they couldn't get rid of.
And the circumstances surrounding its acquisition.
I was joking at the national office when they gave us the charter. I said, okay, if I'm going to be president, what do I get?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, everybody has those jackets
Yeah.
left over.
There you go. No, I was thinking more for acquisition of the museum.
Oh,
How did
museum?
it come to us today?
I think it's important to the history of not only me as part of my scrapbooks, but also as part of the history of Canadian and Ottawa unions. So.
Mhm.
And I got a great connection with Carleton too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And Carleton artifact.
There's Stuart Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, you kept it in good condition.
Well, I didn't wear it very often.
Okay. How often did you wear it?
Never breaks
Well, I know
down.
you took the dog for
I would wear it to demonstrations
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
on,
Okay.
and occasionally I would grab it and obviously stick a bag and some kibble in the pocket to take the dog out if it was a light rain.
Yeah.
It had a sort of a raincoat sort of feel to it.
Lounge demonstration.
But it didn't breathe either, so I don't know, whatever
Okay.
whatever doesn't breathe, if you wore that on a hot day,
Right.
you died, man.
Yeah.
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 So that was it. I wore it mostly to demonstrations for the first couple of years. I actually have some other UE stuff I should combine with this, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I have some pins and stuff.
Some UE pins?
UE pins.
Mm.
So you'd have to follow up with me on that.
Mhm.
You have a little UE collection
Yeah.
together. Especially
And
when
we
you
have,
the charter.
we actually have, someone gave us from CEP, because the IEU joined the communication workers. They wouldn't, when they went under, they wouldn't come near UE. And someone gave us one of the sort of legal presses
Oh, yeah.
to use.
Yeah.
And we had a retired rep hunt it down, and it obviously must have been a local in Montreal that folded, and they sent stuff back to national office, and they kept throwing it in the garbage, and people would come in and go, oh, that's in the garbage, and they put it up on the counter. Someone had thrown the garbage. And then finally someone grabbed it and gave it to Bob.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And we couldn't figure out, because I only knew of one, there was no UE locals in Ottawa except for ours, like, it was the first one, but the IUE had the RCA plant up in Renfrew.
Right.
I knew they were up there, so I was thinking maybe it was there, but apparently it was a Montreal workplace.
So Bob has it now? I think he might have brought it.
It's actually in the storage now.
Oh, it's actually in the storage now?
Yeah, it's
Right.
in the storage.
Right. Oh, we might have had it at the Artifacts Workshop last year.
Last year.
Last
That's
year.
what it was.
That was in the box last
Yeah.
year, that's why
Mhm.
it sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Great.
Anything else? Okay.
Next
This
one.
is great, and
Yeah.
we've
Great.
already started on Chuck Brown's.
Yeah.
You tell him. You
Yeah.
tell. Yeah. I mean.
Working
Yeah.
through his daughter is
Yeah,
really
exactly.
effective, right?
Yeah, because I remember when they
How
first
could he say no
when
to
they
his
first
daughter?
came in and announced that they had the baby and they were going to name her. We all went, huh?
Really? What's her name? Good.
Well, there's Honor is her older
Honor.
sister, and then
Okay.
Greer is my
Greer.
friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Greer. Yeah,
Yeah.
but both of them were a little odd, like in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
use at the particularly at that time because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
what they're 25 now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's true. They're quite
and-
old-fashioned names, aren't
yeah,
they?
Greer was the
Yeah.
only thing they could come up with Greer was a figure
There was a
skater.
film, but there was a
A
film,
film star?
Well, because
Film
she's
star.
she's Greer, so it's not like any of the names.
G-R-E-R.
EER.
Yeah.
So she says
There's a
Green, but change the end.
G-R-E-E-R,
Yeah.
film actress from the 40s.
That's who it is, and
Yeah.
he said that, and I went,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so we're just going to regroup.
Yes.
If you haven't signed, if you haven't signed your form, we haven't had Naomi to sign your form, that needs to be done.
once a month.
Yeah,
Or
this is fun.
Candace, whatever.
Well, I think we could certainly do it
Comptometer?
Once a term.
once a term.
Anybody else need signatures from me?
You do need me to
Or is that
Maybe
yours?
you
I
should
think
buy-
I'm blanket, right?
I signed yours.
Yeah.
Maybe if we got Barb to put on.
Too late now.
Here, we could do it
I have to
on
sign.
our own a couple of times.
I think my first form I didn't sign.
Yeah, get some volunteers
Yes.
for that.
And-
So I know some of you did multiple items, some of you just did one. If you did multiples, choose your favorite of the two, I guess. So we're just gonna go around the table and quickly discuss what it is that you had, and we're gonna go over the assessment form at the back.
Oh, you were already on that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know we weren't supposed to fill that out.
I did
You're supposed to fill it out.
Okay.
You're supposed to fill it out.
I did already.
Yes. So.
I'm sorry, say that one more time? Or tell me after.
Is that the shirt, the jacket?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
Unless you would like to.
Okay, so who wants to start?
Go ahead, Jesse.
I can start. I did a couple, but the one in front of me is the logbook from the Ottawa District Labour Council from Ken, and all the items on the assessment form seem pretty relevant. It's from the Ottawa area. It's very much to do with labor history. Ownership is clear, and it's in good condition and seems stable. So I've recommended it for acquisition. The
Okay.
collection part, I'm not sure about.
Right, so we didn't explain that earlier. According to our collections policy, we have 3 active collections. One is permanent collection. It's used for research and display predominantly. We have an education collection. The education collection is used specifically for programming. It's the sort of collection that you can take to a playground and you're not too worried if the kids cover it in sand and wreck it. Although you'd prefer if they didn't wreck it. But
Naomi just suddenly looked really
Naomi's like,
alarmed.
No. We're not checking the box for yours. So.
No. That's not to say that permanent items can't be used in programming. It's just it's a different mindset behind the idea of the item.
We take the typewriter out and let kids bang away on it. And
That's
Or a
that's
washboard.
right.
or the
Use a
washboard, have them do laundry. Yeah.
One of the distinguishing features between the permanent collection and the education collection is that although they both relate to workers' history, they don't. Items in the education collection don't necessarily fit all the components of the mandate or the development plan. So, for example, if we have a whole set of agricultural shovels, for example, but we have no idea where they were manufactured or where they were used, and the provenience isn't clear, are they related to labor? Yes, farm labor specifically. Are they part of our mandate because it's from Ottawa Valley? Well, we're not sure. Can we let the kids use them to dig in the dirt? Yes.
In fact, we would look for someone who wants to build a pool. And
Well, okay, so that's
Great.
one of the things.
So that would be the case with the cobbler instruments, and maybe, given that we don't know their origin or the their what their use was. Great.
Okay. So
They're a neat object to display at Colonel Vi Day and let kids come up with these.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
handle.
the other distinguishing factor between permanent and education, more so to education, is that we prefer things in the education collection to be durable for that reason. Because we don't have a building right now, we tend to take artifacts to places as opposed to having people come to our artifacts. And because they have to be easily transported, that is one of the things that we do look for in educational material. It's something that you can move around, you can put in the back of your car. It's not necessarily going to break in transit. Things that, again, can be handled without causing them to deteriorate or any further damage. The last item, I think, on the list is reference. And what that is we're developing a library, so to speak. And the reference collection is something that's accessible to the public. It's basically documents and books. So on occasion, we'll get donations of books. They still come in, like everything else comes in.
through Ken's van.
Well, through Ken's van, but they come in as a possible donation. I don't know if you guys noticed the disclaimer on the front of the temporary receipts, the part that basically says once you give it to us, you have no say over where it goes.
Right.
And the whole idea is that it doesn't matter if it's something, if it's a book, if it's an artifact, if it's a textile, if it's, your pet hamster's cage, I don't care. It always has a form, and we decide what to do with it.
Even when it's temporary ownership.
Yeah,
Yeah.
under temporary ownership. So anything that you checked off for yes, for recommended for acquisition, you guys are able to recommend which collection you think it should be part of based on the criteria that I just described. So in your case, you said it wasn't, you couldn't tell from the provenience whether it was from the Ottawa Valley or not?
Yes, the cobbler instruments, that would be probably education. But the book, I wouldn't let children play with the
What was the other one? Oh, the book.
the
It was
scrapbooks.
the scrapbooks.
However, we could use it as an example so they can make their own scrapbooks.
But it's not very durable.
No.
I'll say research and display.
Okay.
We're brainstorming on
All
this.
right.
There gotta be more research, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's photographs in there, there's buttons that are taped, and the buttons are gonna start falling off, there's bumper stickers.
Yeah.
It is a real collection of newspaper articles.
Well,
that are
because it's
very
paper, exclusively paper, it would be considered to be archival, and it would be treated as archival material for the scrapbooks specifically. But that is still part of the research and display collection.
But the reference material would be like published material.
Yeah. Who wants to go next?
I can
Go in a
next.
circle.
Lena and I worked on the Underwood wireless. No, not wireless. Well, it was. Noiseless typewriter.
It's the original version of wireless.
Yeah, exactly. We determined that it filled all the parts of the mandate, and the fact that it is from, well, is it from?
Well, it might
It
not have
was
been manufactured
purchased.
here, but it was used in
Used
Ottawa.
here, and
Which is good
technically
enough.
it was made in Canada, so
Yeah.
that in itself is a good aspect for it. And it was related to workers' history, more the local individual business owner. And it's in good condition, but would still need a cleaning and further analysis to be completely sure. And we recommended it for acquisition and included as part of the research and display collection.
Women's work. Oh, yes. Women work.
She's a woman.
Yes, women type their boss's keyboard. That was one of the very interesting things
Really?
that happened to the language in the 80s. When women started losing clerical jobs because when men were typing and emailing their own memos, it stopped being typing and it became keyboarding. I'm sure that was, an accident.
Yeah.
Well,
Complete
we-
coincidence.
We weren't
Yeah,
going to be
lots of
second president, they were
coincidences.
going to be admin assistants. We
That's
were
right.
gonna-
Stop getting
That's right.
hysterical.
Yeah.
Keyboarding sounds kind of
Remind me
Like
for education books.
I had the leather suitcase, and it has a really fascinating history, which unfortunately is not really related to Ottawa history, so I don't know to what extent it could be told. It belonged to her uncle, who was an ethnomusicologist who traveled to Europe to study
cool.
folk, the roots of folk Quebec music,
Cool.
which is absolutely awesome. But I have recommended it for acquisition nonetheless because it could be used in the education collection for programming because you have to take objects to schools, and Naomi was talking about how they were thinking about doing some sort of immigration programming, and it could be used to carry objects thematically that relate to immigration because it is the type of trunk that would have been used on steamships or steam trains, and it looks the part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does.
When is it from, if you don't mind me asking?
Probably.
I don't know where it was made, whether, and because my family were perhaps not the first owners, it may have come from Europe to Canada and been acquired here by my family. But it belonged to my uncle in Montreal who used it to travel extensively in Europe as well as all over Quebec.
In the
as part of
40s,
his
or?
research. Yeah, late 40s through the 50s and the 60s when he was researching up on Chanson.
Oh, cool.
The second artifact I worked on was Ken's UE president jacket, and it ticks all the boxes as well. It originated in the Ottawa area. Ken is the first president of the UE 567 in the city. Of course, related to workers' history and labor history there, and it's got a clear provenance and ownership as he's sitting in this room. It's a very reasonable condition. Seems unthreatening. All the pieces are accounted
Well,
for. There's
not
a
according to your
table.
CMP.
Yeah.
It is
It's
just
unthreatening to the rest of the collection. I don't think it's going to explode or anything along those lines.
He
So I
didn't
had
mention that he killed the previous
He killed
president
him. So
to
that's what
acquire
that
the
one
jacket.
was.
That's how it worked in the UA.
The bloodstains,
They were
right?
really militant union.
As a former member of 567, I'm a little concerned now.
Yeah, we found a Carlton connection with
Yeah,
it.
there's Carl.
Yep.
Yep, exactly.
Which is? Stuart.
It's Stuart
Stuart
Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Who I thought I saw walking in front of the building earlier, but I wasn't sure if that was him.
Peering in
He's
on
the
us.
current president of the local.
Yeah.
The
No.
local merged with the auto workers,
Yeah.
Canadian Auto Workers, and then it merged just this summer with the CEP, Communication and Energy Paperwork, to become Unifor. So Stuart's been the local president for 10 years now, and I was the first 3 years.
So you didn't have to pass the jacket on.
No, you notice Stuart and I are a little different in size.
True.
No, I didn't. And there was one woman in between us, very briefly for a year or so.
Who's that?
Mandy Rock. Yeah, Mandy took over from me and then dumped it on Stuart. I think it's actually more than 10 years, and Stuart's gotta be
It's gotta be.
15 years.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Just so I've
What is
recommended
this?
it for the research and display collection.
And he's not the president of 567 now, I don't think he is.
That's
Yep.
Stuart.
Yeah.
Unifor 567.
No, I thought it was somebody else.
No, no, I just had a meeting with him.
Sorry. I'm confused with something
Which
else.
was your old union.
I know.
He gets confused because he's also working for QP, which used to be 2323, but
23,
then
23.
They're
merged with the sessionals, and now it's called.
53.
You were involved. In it.
I know, and that's
the numbers
who
together.
represents
I love
them.
it.
600.
I remember
Yeah.
when we were organizing 23, 23.
What's it
we
called?
made
4600.
4600.
Yeah, 4600, yeah.
confused
So
to
two.
the way that
So
it-
see,
that kind
you
of
guys have a
communist
personal
theater.
connection
Because they're all in the
extenuated through that
Yeah.
jacket.
Professors of history next year, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
We discovered we were
so
getting better paid than we were.
Okay, last but not least.
Finally.
yes, so I worked on two different objects. This one here in front of me is the green metal comptometer. Naomi. Let's see, it's pretty solid, it's pretty sturdy. You were saying that it might have been
Really sturdy.
It might have been bought at Army surplus. It's very much it's green, very from like 1943 at least according to the patent on the bottom, and it's kind of more worn than some of the other machines in the same collection that were used by your parents in the business. It's I don't think it's going anywhere. It's pretty solid. I don't think it's dangerous to anything else in the collection. The keys don't seem to like work necessarily anymore, but it's otherwise in very, very good condition. I don't know if it originated in Ottawa. It was built in the States, but you were saying that a lot of these machines were being sold in Ottawa and used in Ottawa extensively. It was used in your family's business. I think it does relate to work and workers, particularly because it's ladies who are often doing the tedious number thing.
Were women.
That's the thing. So I feel like that's definitely, it's good to represent the women's side of things. It does have a fairly clear provenance, and we know it was owned by your father and used in the business. Just by the signs, may have been used during the Second World War, which is interesting in terms of Canadian involvement in the war as well, labor as well. And so I recommend it for acquisition for the research and display because I think it's pretty good criteria. I don't know. I think it's good. Any thoughts on that?
Sounds like it probably could be used for education as well, since it's so
Yeah.
hefty, and I noticed there's
I
like
feel
4 or 5 of them in there.
I feel like
Let's get it working.
Yeah, if it could be working.
What it basically is a very early computer.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's a lot of students, like a lot of children, be like, "What do you mean, ComTom computer?" It's like it looks very similar. So I feel it could be, but just like if it was working, I would recommend that.
It may just need a really good clean.
That's true.
You know. Yeah.
One other thing we find interesting about the typewriter we take it out, the kids look at it and they go, oh, cool, look, it's just look, it's a computer keyboard.
So sorry, this is the...
Yeah.
They don't have this.
They don't have
It's the
history
QWERTY
of-
board,
They
you know,
notice it,
but-
you know,
yeah.
and they notice that.
Yep.
And one little guy wanted to buy it because it was better than a computer because it printed out immediately.
I love it.
It's faster, more convenient.
They type their names.
Your
It's-
words
it's
appear
terrific to watch
immediately
kids
on the
liberty
page.
messages. It's been great. Yeah.
Well,
And there's a few
And
things
it's
they
errors.
can't quite do.
Yeah.
How can I change the font?
They type and then the keys get caught.
Yeah, oh my
It's a lot harder to copy
great.
paste. It's
And
very
we work with a
Lots
woman,
of hard copy paste.
You can only cut
she had
paste.
been trained in the 50s in Virginia in Commerce High School, which was trained women just to be, you know, it was a 4-year program and you went as a secretary. And so we first got our little Macs, if you remember them, you wouldn't remember them, but you might have seen pictures of the little screen with this big, and she put a hard return at the end of each line because she was so used to hitting the cursor.
Yeah.
And then if I'd go to take the document and format it anything else, it would just explode. All these hard returns. I'd have to go and take them all out again. It was 2 years before I could convince her to stop hitting the
Just stop
target.
hitting-
Just keep typing, it just goes on its own. It's a really neat modern invention.
okay, Ken, pulling out your page. So we need to finish up.
Okay.
So,
I thought
you
we
guys,
finished with my story.
End on a high note. Yes.
Well, sorry, that's a low note.
so you guys all had a chance to use our forms today. How did you find them? Was there spaces where things should be added, things should be taken away? Were they easy to understand? Were they complicated? Was there things that struck you as being odd?
It was a little
Anything seemed
complicated
out of
for me,
place.
and like trying to because the first machine I worked on had like the ink as well, and I was kind of like because they're both in the same artifact number because they're associated with each other, but it's like there wasn't quite enough space for two. But do I use a separate form or I think that was like but it's really kind of weird to just do a whole separate form for this small tube of ink. So yeah, I'm just wondering if there's possible to have a little bit more space on the form.
Or even
On,
if there,
on which one specifically? On the condition report?
On the condition report. Yes.
or if it were possible, if there was, because of my generation, an online form, and not necessarily on the internet, but like a computerized version, so you can fill in or use as much or as little space as is needed, rather than just.
There is an electronic version and a PDF version for the temporary receipt form. And of course the electronic one, you could just keep going.
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
going,
yeah,
keep
yeah.
going.
That would be
These are all the PDF versions that we printed out today.
just for yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand. But yeah.
For your generation.
I think maybe having a section for potential uses would be interesting, because there's just like the type of collection that we are recommending it for. And like mine had a specific intended use, so maybe just like a place for suggestions.
Or notes.
Or notes,
Yeah.
like in archives, we usually acquire documents based on their primary or secondary use value or third use value, and it's sort of part of the process of acquiring and deciding whether or not it'd be useful. So I don't know, I just think that maybe for people who then will eventually use this artifact, if they've got a little section, oh, someone's thought about this that could be used, and then it might like trigger some ideas later. I don't know how valuable that would be for you guys, but
It could be.
You could just have a little note section at the end.
Yeah.
Other. And then.
Just a
Anything else?
very good.
Okay.
If anything comes to mind,
Oh.
after you have gone away and thought about it for a week or whatever,
Yeah.
by all means contact Santa or Lindsay.
Yep.
No deadline on any of this.
any other individuals who may have additional information, maybe also a reference section, because if we do some research, sometimes a website or a book or a publication that can be useful about
Yeah.
it. 'Cause, like,
Read this
I
book
didn't
on
really-
comptometers.
I didn't do much research, but this person who owned it, there is information out there about him, so I could have written like names of books or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These are also just primary reports too, right?
They
Is there
are,
a more
yeah.
extensive process to have
It's the
them
beginning of the
afterwards?
process.
Yes, this is the beginning. So what would happen after this is that there's a group of us and we sit down and we basically go through the forms, go through the assessment forms, make up lists. The lists then go to the board. The board approves or disapproves of the list. There's 3. There's one for acquisitions for permanent collection, one's for educational material, and then rejects. And once that goes through, then the artifacts actually have to be properly assessed and cataloged. The cataloging process is much more involved. It's much more in-depth. The condition reports are much more in-depth. At that point,
We would happily have a
Yes.
part 2 of the workshop to do that in more depth and detail.
We did actually talk about that last year.
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
a part 2.
But we can actually do it this year.
we can actually do it.
Yep. All right, so we will be in touch. We will plot over gelato.
And after we then decide to acquire something, we need people then to go and research those artifacts and
Yeah.
all of that stuff.
That's
And
part
where
of
our
the-
volunteers come in.
Yes. Originally, I think we had proposed to do a cataloging workshop,
Yes.
and that is
Yeah.
actually part of the cataloging process,
Is
is
it?
to,
Okay.
Yeah,
to
I
research
would
as much information as
love-
possible. It's also part of the cataloging process to list like additional resources that aren't people. The whole idea behind well,
Or that were originally people, but.
right. The whole reason why that's on the form in terms is that you're looking for additional sources in terms of people. Like Naomi could say, this belonged to my cousin. This is their name and this is their email address, and let me talk to them to see if they want to contact you, because that's the sort of information that you can't get afterwards.
Yes.
Finding reference material, books from libraries and things like that, you can always find that electronically or whatever, or if someone happens to know offhand. So that's the difference between the assessment and the cataloging forms. We will let you know when we're going to sit down and hash out the forms to make the lists, and then once those come back from the board, we'll definitely look into having a cataloging workshop to get all this stuff
So-
properly cataloged.
January. Okay, when is the next board meeting? December?
16th, 13th, whatever the Monday is.
Well, just so they can get the whole idea. So
Yeah, then it's the 16th.
we've got new policy going through in December and January.
Ta-da!
The first things being formally accepted into the
Our
collection.
very first formal acquisition will
Yeah.
take place, so that at the AGM, we can have it there and,
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yep.
so there we go.
be a next
So
big step for the museum.
Yeah.
exciting
Hopefully
times at
this
the
year
WHM.
So I
hopefully
just
this year
wanted to
the
say on behalf
collections.
of the Carleton Center for Open History and all of us who got here, thank you to Sam and Lindsay for
Yay.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the museum, David, thank you very much. The partnership that we have with your
Thank
program
you
is so valuable to us
And
as a
thank you
museum.
to you all for finding the time in your very busy schedules. I completely
Very busy
understand.
Have a lovely day.
And yeah, because this is going to be a skill that you can put on your resumes.
Yeah.
Great. And thanking you in advance for sending our release forms for video.
Oh,
I'm saving paper, so fill in
So
the
we got
middle
speaking
section,
of
you don't have to worry about because that's if you're a minor. So it's
Very
basically
good. Without, everyone had to fill out one yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes.
your name at the top and then.
Oh, I don't think no one has you one, and I wouldn't know yet.
and-
Oh, oh, really?
Yeah.
all right, and if I can get your completed forms, please.
I will.
Speaking of timing, there's
So
one that
just
arrives
name
in
in one
5 minutes,
spot?
and there's one that's
yeah,
in
and
20
then
minutes.
the
So I'm gonna try and catch
signature
one in
and-
5. If
yeah,
anybody else
I'll
is
get
taking any
that to you
5,
with the date.
rush.
Is email?
Yep, actually, Lauren is hanging up the door apparently, so we should.
Yeah, because there's a bus in like 4 minutes
Yeah,
now,
so maybe
or
we
there's a
could
bus
get her
in
the
20.
form
So
for those.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's someone waiting outside.
No, it's just,
You know what, we can get David all our emails and
Yes,
he
you
can
know
send
what,
them
I
to you.
can,
If you just want.
I'll send you the form.
Yeah, we'll do that. That would be easy.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
All right, great.
Thank
And Anna, could you tell me, scarf is just hanging off the edge of the thing there.
thank you.
Absolutely.
When's
Sorry,
my
like, I
next
really
bus?
Yeah, no,
back
no,
up,
no,
like,
absolutely,
the
yeah.
bus. Kind of keeping an eye on.
Does this go back to you?
Yes, it does, thank you.
No, but I'm trying
God,
to-
I lost without it.
Oh, I have one in 7 minutes.
Evening of one of the things.
Were you catching?
so-
Oh, yeah.
Churchill.
Ah,
I'm going the way you usually would go.
Right.
huh?
Going that
Not
way.
being rude when I go by you, but I
I'm
thought
going shop.
artifacts themselves.
Bayshore.
We're just trickling in
I'm not being
whenever.
snobby.
An architect I got ones there for fairly cheap that don't look like
Yes.
this.
Here's about 40 years ago.
I love
So
it.
one of them is based in Ottawa, the Ottawa Car and Aircraft Strike, which was at the time the longest strike between 18 months.